Hello and welcome to the Messages and Methods Livecast Live 2.0 live stream podcast, hosted by Encore entrepreneurs Shelley, Carney, and Toby, Younis. We inspire excitement for content creation and marketing your brand and business while answering all your technology and digital marketing questions. We love to help you, our content creator friends, with actionable tips to land more clients, nurture leads, and gain trust as an expert in your industry. Chat with Shelley and Toby live every Thursday on YouTube or Facebook. That's right, chat with us, because we're here to chat. And I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Younis. Thanks for joining us today. Before Shelley makes introductions, I'm going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. We'd appreciate it before you leave the show today. If you'd like our show, YouTube likes it when you like our video. Share it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your business associates, the entirety of your social network so that we can continue to grow the channel. And finally, if you are not already a subscriber, this would be the ideal time for you to click on that subscribe button. When you see the notifications bell, click on that as well. And that way, every time we start a live stream, you'll be immediately informed and as a result, in the know. And also we want to let you know that the super chat light is lit. If you'd like to make a small contribution to our project here at Messages and Methods, just go down to the bottom of the chat window. You'll see a stylized dollar bill looking thing. Click on that, and the good folks at YouTube will walk you through the process of making that contribution. If you're watching the video after the live stream, look down at the bottom of the window and you'll see a heart with a dollar sign in it. It's called
the other way around. Dollar heart. Super thanks.
Super thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a dollar with a heart in it, not a heart with a dollar sign?
Oh.
Yeah, it's a heart with a dollar sign.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Just click on it. Click on it no matter what you do.
Click.
And here's
Click
the good news.
Things.
YouTube allows you to give us donations up to $500. Can you imagine that?
I would like to imagine that.
That would be great.
Today, we're going to be speaking to content creators about critiquing your content strategy. And we have a special guest. His name is Jason Barnard. He's the author of the Fundamentals of Brand SERPs for Business. He's a digital marketing consultant who specializes in brand SERPs and knowledge panels. Jason is the host of With Jason Barnard, a podcast about entrepreneurship, business, and marketing. So let's welcome Jason. Hello. Applause.
That's our audience. They're happy to see you, Jason.
Yeah, I got a cheer and a clap, and I'm terribly, terribly happy.
So welcome, Jason. How did you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you've got a great story to tell, so I'm going to let you tell it.
Right. Yeah, lovely. Thank you for having me. It's a bonkers story, in my opinion, is that I grew up in the countryside in Yorkshire in the north of England as a punk, surrounded by sheep and cows who don't care about punk attitude at all. And moved to Liverpool, went to the same university as John Lennon, but 20 years later, and joined a band called Stanley the Counting Horse, played music. I was a singer with his big, deep voice, and I could sing.
Wow.
And people would come and see us just because I was incredibly thin and very small, but I had this big voice.
And
so
you were
would come and see us, and I was a
right.
Very good point. And yeah, it was this. It was. I don't know. It was a strange combination that people would come and see, and we had a lot of fun. Then I moved to Paris, joined a band. I wanted to be the singer, and they said we don't need a singer. You have to play double bass. I didn't play the double bass, but I bought one and learned to play it just to join the band.
Nice.
And became a double bass player. And turns out I'm actually quite good at the double bass. So I was lucky. They asked me to play the one instrument that I'm actually good at. That was wonderful. Then I moved, played with the band, for 8-9 years professionally, playing punk folk. So it was folk music played with punk attitude and punk style. We played with people like Bob Dylan. We were on the same festival as Bob Dylan, the Pogues, the Manna Negra, Captain Sensible from The Damned, who was one of my great heroes when I was a punk in the countryside. And that was awesome. I mean, that's absolutely the dream job that you really want. I mean, being a very unsuccessful rock star, but making a living doing it is so cool. We never got famous, which is a pity. But I think part of the reason people play in rock bands is because they believe, despite all indications to the contrary, they believe they're going to become famous, and they never do. You know, I mean, the number of bands who actually become famous is 0.1%,
right?
And we
It's
weren't one of them. But it was awesome. And then I gave that up and became a blue dog in a cartoon. I voiced and wrote with my ex-wife a whole TV series, and I was Boo the Blue Dog. And that was nuts as well, because I actually ended up becoming, this is really interesting. My wife was a yellow koala, I was the blue dog, and we were best friends in the cartoon. And we were in Mauritius, and we were trying to find people to do the voices for the other characters in the family. And we couldn't find anybody. So I ended up doing 5 voices. So I was my own father, my own mother. I was my daughter's brother, my wife's father, and my wife's grandfather, all at the same time.
Oh my goodness. I you know, as you started to describe that, I was thinking of lineage as opposed to cartoons. So forgive me, because a whole bunch, like everything went through my head right there real quick. So
no, yeah, the lineage was I was my wife's husband and I was my daughter's father, but in the cartoon it all got a bit turned around. And it was delightful. It was a lot of fun. And that's where I learned all about Google, because we became phenomenally successful. We were the 10,000th most visited site in the year in 2007, with 100 million page views and 5 million visits, because we learned to get to the top of Google for children's entertainment, children's games, children's songs, and children's TV series. And we were competing with Disney.
wow, that's pretty tough competition there alone.
Yeah, and we used to win. That was delightful. It was one of those moments in life where you think, I'm beating Disney. Isn't that cool?
And so that effort and that experience led to what you're doing now.
Yeah. When that kind of fell apart for various reasons, I was looking for work. So I pitched for work as an SEO consultant, digital marketer. And it was actually quite tough, because what would happen is I would go and pitch to clients, and they would say, wonderful, great, you're amazing, we really want to work with you. And then they would Google my name, Jason Barnard, and it would say, Jason Barnard is a blue dog. And then they would say, well, we actually don't want to work with you after all.
Because you are, after all, a blue dog.
Well, I am, but and that was, for me, the kind of light bulb moment is I realized that what Google was showing was what I was previously, and it wasn't showing what I am today.
Right.
And so I thought, how do I educate Google? How do I explain to Google what I need it to show for me to be convincing to my audience today, which is no longer 6-year-old children. It's bosses of huge companies in France, the US, and the UK who want me to get on board and give them advice. And as I said, boss of huge company doesn't want advice from a cartoon blue dog.
Right. So before we go on to the business part of our conversation, you mentioned, you used the phrase to describe the instrument you played, a double bass. I have I've never heard of that instrument before. How does it differ from an electric? How does it differ from a normal rock band electric bass?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because for me, double bass is totally obvious, but I think that's terribly English of me. In America, I think you call it a bull fiddle. I saw Some Like It Hot, Jack Lemmon with Tony Curtis, and Jack Lemmon plays the bull fiddle. Is that the large stand-up? Yep.
You play bass. With
the guy from the Stray Cats plays it too.
Got it. All right.
And it's the most wonderful instrument, because with the electric bass, you're playing it like this. And
like it's a guitar.
Yeah. And with the double bass, you can be incredibly aggressive. I mean, in terms of the double bass, it's 20% musical talent and 80% physical domination of the instrument. And that's lovely because it suits my personality and the way that I work perfectly. I wouldn't say I don't have talent, but I would say that a lot of the way that I play the double bass is dominating it physically.
All right. Well, again, I had never heard that term used to describe it, but now I'm glad that I do. I think that's slightly different. So, but now I'm glad. So I'm glad I asked.
Right, yeah. I mean, you've got bull fiddle, you've got double bass, you've got contrabass, you've got stand-up bass, you've got doghouse bass, apparently, as well, is another way to say it. There are millions, millions, that's exaggerating, excuse me. There are dozens of ways to say double bass, stand-up bass, bull fiddle, doghouse bass.
So what I'm going to do is I found one on so that people can know what we're talking about. I'm just out of the stream real quick. Is that it?
Yeah, I didn't look much like that. I mean, I didn't pay it that much respect. But
I couldn't find one with you in
That's
it.
That's the girl who holds it until you get there.
If you search Jason Barnard double bass, I'll bet you find an image with me standing. Probably either I'm playing in a gig or I'm standing on a river in the south of France.
Nice, Barnard.
So part of my job is to convince Google to show the images that I want when people search about me or around me. So if you search Jason Barnard double bass, it should show something that's reasonably representative of who I am and what I did with the double bass.
So tell me if I'm about to show your image. There's a notation on the face of the bass, and it says bark. Is that you?
Yes, that's me.
All right. This is what Jason looks like, and that looks like the Seine. I don't know what is that.
That's a river in the south of France,
okay.
And that double bass. I mean, we can actually keep this up because it's a really interesting double bass. Because when the band said to me, "Do you want to play in our band?" and I said yes, they said you have to play the double bass. So I went and bought the first double bass I found, and it was this one. And it turns out it's a really good double bass. And the reason that Bark is written on it is because the group was called the Barking Dogs.
Oh, I see.
And we used to have this, you know, the spray paint. I can't remember. It's called a pochoir in French. Is that you would just spray and it would put the name up there. That was what we were using. And that
a stencil.
A stencil. Yeah, stencil. You're a genius. Thank you so much.
No, I'm not, but I remember that.
And that double bass has, I mean, you can't see it here, but it's in a very bad state, but it always and still sounds really, really good. And it has been literally blown up by the French police. The terrorist squad found our van with my double bass in the back, and they didn't know exactly. That was what it looked like. And they detonated a small charge on the back doors of our van, and my double bass was leaned against it, and that's what it looked like.
Wow.
When it was blown up by the French police.
To get into the van. Why were the French police trying to get into your van?
Because it was a closed van during what they called Vigipira, and they thought it might be a terrorist attempt on a school.
Wow.
And the double bass remains to this day the only double bass I've ever owned. So it's kind of like still being married to your first girlfriend or boyfriend 50 years after you started.
Yeah, I haven't had that kind of good fortune with the women in my life.
No, me neither. But with the double bass, I've had immense.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing to do. Yeah, find something
still got
that
the same shape. So
yeah. All right.
Oh, dearie me. Let's not get onto that topic because it's going to get very dangerous very quickly.
So thank you very much for that. We love stories. Shelley probably told you already. We love storytelling, but we have to get on to business here. And the first question I have for you, and then I'll turn it back over to Shelley, is tell our audience what the acronym SERP translates to, and then what is it?
Right. Great question to start with. SERP, S-E-R-P, is Search Engine Results Page. and I specialize in a brand SERP, which is the search engine results page for a brand name or a person's name or a podcast name. And I focused on Google. 92% of the world use Google. So a brand SERP for me is what Google shows your audience when they search your name or your brand name. And I'm specialized in making sure that it represents you accurately, positively, and convincingly to your audience.
You know, when someone says that to me, I always think in terms of magic, like that's magic that they can make that happen. And we're going to talk about that later in the program. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Shelley.
Oh, okay. You asked my question, so I have to figure it out. So how continue? I see you have more to say about this. So tell us more about brand.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of magic. Is that I think a lot of people see Google as this massive machine that we don't understand, and that getting Google to represent our brand or our name or ourselves in the way that we want is incredibly difficult. And in fact, it isn't. It's actually very, very, very simple in the sense that Google is simply reading what it's finding on the internet and then representing that to its audience or its users who are searching your brand name or your personal name. And all you need to do is be clear and consistent about who you are, what you're doing, who your audience is across every platform. Google will pick it up and then it will represent you in the way that you expect. And if it isn't, then it means that your online message, your digital ecosystem is not clear. Google isn't stupid. Google's smart. If it's misrepresenting you, then there's a reason, and you need to find that reason, correct it, and Google will then represent you the way that you would like to be represented to your audience, as long as that representation is honest.
Well, I've always teased, well, not always, but I teased Shelley that I'm looking at her brand page right now. And she's done an excellent job of getting Google coverage for herself, because she's all over the first page of Shelley Carney, which is what you want out of life, because it's a wonderful place to start. You know, go ahead.
Brilliant. No, but that's really interesting because you're actually using Microsoft Bing. And Microsoft is actually better than Google. But if you click on that link, see results for. If you click on that really quickly, on the right hand side.
This right there.
Tell me down and left. Down on her photo.
Oh, this
one here.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
So click there.
Yep. There you go. That's absolutely beautiful. And Microsoft is actually better than Google at that.
You know, that's really interesting because I have Chrome selected. I don't know why it's using Bing.
Oh, I don't know either. But what I find really interesting is that we use Google a lot. Google is incredibly smart. But actually, Microsoft Bing will tend to give a better representation of a person than Google. Yeah. And here, you can see that's really useful. If I'm interested in Shelley Carney, excuse me. Oh, Dick. Oh, how very, very embarrassing.
That's all right.
I wish I had I've got my glasses. So no excuse at all. If you're interested in Shelley Carney,
no need to apologize. We're not exactly the easiest names to pronounce. So I don't know.
That's a great result. I like that because you can see not only on the left-hand side recommendations of where I might wish to engage with Shelley. On the right-hand side, I can see the facts about her and people that I might also be interested in. And if you did that same search on Google, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be that good.
Yeah.
That's just my LinkedIn. That's keeps returning.
So I don't know why I'm doing a Google search.
Because it's going to bing.com. You know, you must have clicked on something when you did the Windows update.
I mean, if you type google.com into that top address bar, then you'll get Google. Google.com. There you go. Now search for Shelley.
Isn't that funny?
It is. I think a lot of
There's
people.
Google.
There you go. Now there's nothing on the right, and what's interesting there is what's on the right is fact.
Uh-oh.
So Microsoft has understood the fact and Google hasn't.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never noticed that distinction for her.
So on the left-hand side, you have what Google and Bing, depending on which platform you're using, is recommending as ways to engage with Shelley. And on the right-hand side is a summary of the facts and other people with who you might be interested in, who are related to Shelley topically. Sorry, excuse me. So this is a really nice demonstration of how much better Microsoft is than Google.
You know what? I'm agreeing. I didn't realize that. So I am starting with a Chrome window. It is making some kind of switch over to Bing. And in addition to that, I searched Shelley Carney. Bing added the company, AGK Media Studio. So these are all things.
Well, it's understood that the relationship between the company and the person, whereas Google hasn't.
Right.
That's because Microsoft owns LinkedIn. So they're calling in anything I put into LinkedIn as fact and showing you that first. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Exactly. 100%.
And when you search me on,
whereas if you put in Google, you'll probably see more of my YouTube videos because they own YouTube.
Agreed.
Yeah, and your Twitter, they have a partnership with Twitter, so they show Twitter a great deal, and obviously YouTube too. And for both of you're, if I may criticize, you're making a huge mistake.
In what way?
You don't have a personal website that you own that represents you. It's what I call the entity home. And so you're saying, Shelley, it's showing my LinkedIn. For you, Toby, it was showing something from Amazon, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And if you want to take control of what Google and Bing show your audience when they Google or Bing your brand name or your personal name, you need to give them a reference from yourself. Because it sounds a bit strange, but they're looking for your version of your own story, and then they'll go and corroborate it around the web, including LinkedIn, including Crunchbase, including IMDb, Music Brains, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But they want that version from you, about you. And that's your entity home, and that needs to be a site that you own. And it could be one page, but it's a domain name that you own with one page that explains who you are, what you do, and which audience you serve.
Well,
that is how you get control. Excuse me, sorry.
No. I think that's amazing advice. And I love these kind of programs where you're advising us technically, but you're also telling our audience what to do. I want to share something else with you, and you can tell us why the way we've approached it is incorrect. All right. So we do have websites.
Sorry, I feel like I'm being terribly critical, but
no, that's what we're looking for. We want honest what is it?
Feedback.
Honest feedback. Yeah, there's nothing better in business than that.
But it's a huge mistake that a lot of people make. And if you think about it, domain name is $15 a year.
Right.
And
so
hosting
I have
a
domain, Younis.com.
Okay.
And I have ShelleyCarney.com.
And she has ShelleyCarney.com.
Ooh,
but when it goes someplace, it goes to a product, an application called solo.to. Right. So the domain name is a link, and it goes to solo.to, which has my information, our books, the shows that we produce, et cetera, et cetera. And I wonder, is the mistake here not that we have our own domain name, we've acquired our own domain names, but that it's not going to the Younis website. This is the solo.to/Younis. Website.
100%. Basically, the solo.to is something you don't own.
Right.
You own the domain, but you don't own the content on this page.
That's correct. Yeah.
And both Google and Bing are looking for content on a domain you own with content that you control, and it knows you control. And here, potentially, this could be absolute rubbish. And it could be not from you.
Right.
This could be a cheat. So you would need to have actually not only the domain name, which you have, which is great, but you would then just need to simply have this content displayed when somebody is visiting that exact domain name.
Right.
And the reason, as you saw on the top of my search, that I start with Amazon is that's our Amazon author page. That's where our, because we sell our books on Amazon. So
right, which is great. It means that Google and Bing have understood you, but you don't own that page on Amazon.
Right. That's correct.
Whereas I own this page, the one we can see now. I own that 100%. All the content is mine. I can change whatever I want, whenever I want. And Google looks to this for information about me from me. So obviously I can say whatever I want, but Google will always look around the web and verify and check that what I'm saying is true. So it's looking for a version of my story from me. And right now, for both you, Toby, and you, Shelley, is it doesn't understand, or it isn't confident that that version of the story is actually from you. And that's purely the domain name, not corresponding to the one that you've actually registered.
Yeah, this is a very personal website, from table of contents to what you currently do to the things that you have potential for: author, speaker, podcast host, guest, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is really different when it comes, in terms of structure, it's actually a very straightforward structure, but it's all about you.
Well, and the domain name is jasonbarnard.com, so it's logical that it's all about me. And it's, in fact, if you look at it, it's my life story upside down.
Yeah.
It starts with what I do now, and it moves down towards what I did at the start, which is being at the same university as John Lennon. So it's my life story backwards. Mm-hmm. And Google looks to this and says, well, what does Jason say? What's important for Jason? And now I'm going to look around the web and see if what's important for Jason and what Jason says about himself is actually corroborated and supported by the people. There you can see Rand Fishkin, L.A. DeSolis, famous people within my industry. Do they agree? Do they support this point of view? Yes or no? And so my job is to say, this is my story, you can see here, and look at all these people who confirm what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. At that point, you get knowledge, you get understanding, and you get Google to display your brand message as a person or as a company in the way that you want when somebody Googles your name or your brand name.
Very nicely done.
Okay.
It's super simple. I mean, it's stunningly simple in the sense that, I come from a world of SEO and people think, oh, that's really geeky. It's complicated, lots of code. What I'm saying is just tell your story and make sure that that story is consistent across the web. That isn't complicated. And if you're a company, it's have a brand message, do your marketing, make sure your marketing appeals to your audience. And that's purely good business, good marketing, and good branding. SEO is third in the list of the important things that you need to do. Mm-hmm. You need to market, you need to brand, and then you need to package it for Google. And SEO, search engine optimization, is simply packaging that content that you've created for your audience for Google.
So the assumption, as I look through this and listen to what you're saying, the assumption I would have to make is that in the case of Jason Barnard, you are your company. You don't have a second business website. Is that correct?
No, I do actually. It's called Kalicube, kalicube.com. And we had a really interesting experience recently where we hit what I call the tipping point. If you search for Kalicube without the .com, just Kalicube, you will see a representation of the company and its products and the offers and myself that makes sense to our audience. And we now have more or less control over what Google shows our audience when they search Kalicube, when they search Kalicube Tuesdays, which is our event. There you go. When they search Kalicube Pro, which is our SaaS platform, our Twitter account is there, our YouTube account is there, our courses are there. So if you search Kalicube, it's because you're interested in our products, our services.
So this is what happens when I go to kalicube.com.
Yeah.
Right. Very business looking website. If I searched, this is what happens when I search Kalicube by itself. and it's all you and Kalicube again, including all that information on the left-hand side in Google that was missing on both Shelley's and my.
That's the right-hand side.
Pardon me?
That was the right-hand side.
I'm sorry, right-hand side information.
Yeah, right and left. I mean, if we look again at the left-hand side is suggestions and the right-hand side is fact.
Right.
And what we need to do as brands and as people is manage both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Make sure the facts on the right-hand side are correct, accurate, and represent who we are, what we do, and who our audience is. And on the left-hand side, it gives our audience the opportunity to choose how they interact with us. And if you look at this, it's saying you can interact with Kalicube through the SaaS platform. Jason Barnard is there. We're a digital marketing agency. We specialize in brand SERP optimization. You can come and see us on Twitter. You can come and see us on LinkedIn. You can visit our YouTube channel. But we dominate, and Google is simply allowing the user, you, my audience, to decide how you want to interact with me.
So you're currently living in Aubais, France?
Yeah, and that's the other delightful thing about the Google Brand SERP is when Google gets it right, you immediately know where I live. You immediately know where my company is based. You know what products we offer. You can interact with me on Twitter. You choose a social media platform, and if you search for my name, Jason Barnard, you would see who my wife is, you would see who my mother is, you would see how old I am, unfortunately. You would see my favorite photos. So Google is basically saying, here is a representation of this person or this company that makes sense to its audience in the way I've understood that its audience is interested in them.
So off topic, does the Tour de France pass anywhere near Aubais?
Yeah, it does.
Does it?
Frequently.
But
right now I'm in Oxford, so I'm kind of cheating. So the
Yeah.
Tour de France is not only in the summer, so already gone, but I'm not anywhere near there right now.
So every time I watch the Tour de France every year, and every time I watch it, I say I would love to live in one of those towns that they pass through, and one of these times I'm going to literally just do that.
You really should. Have you seen them go up Mont Ventoux?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I've ridden a bike up Mont Ventoux.
You have?
Yeah, 30 years ago when I was young. And,
I was going to say, yeah.
No, exactly. Thank you very much.
I'm impressed.
Candidly.
I am impressed with that.
But I was a big bike fan. I loved riding my bike, and I was a huge fan like you. And I thought, if there's one thing I have to do in my life, it's ride up Mont Ventoux. And it's super difficult. And I did it one day once. Mm-hmm. And these people are doing it after 60 days of riding or whatever it is.
Yeah,
riding a bike.
It's 21 days, but when Ventoux is included, it's always about halfway through. They've already ridden 2,200 miles by the time they get there, so
yeah,
it's just amazing. And it looks hard for them. It looks hard for them with, 18-pound carbon fiber bikes and, 9 chain wheel, it's amazing.
But I'll tell you one thing. As you're riding up, if you just keep thinking, how much fun is it going to be when I go down the other side? Then you're fine. And it is absolutely delightful. When you go down the other side and you just got your hands up in the air and you don't have to make any effort.
Oh, that's way more courage than I have to not to ride that downhill. Downhills are always amazing to me because
it takes you 6 hours to ride up, and it takes 5 minutes to ride
back down. It's
such a waste of time.
All right,
and you just think all of that effort.
I'll let Shelley get us back on track here.
Oh, all right.
Oh, sorry.
No need to apologize.
We can talk about bicycles all day long.
Yeah, I can too. There's 3 of them in my garage right now.
Oh, right. I love bikes. When I was a kid, I used to. Once a month, I used to take my entire bike apart. I had this really nice race set. It was a rally. And I would take it all apart, right down to the pedals and the ball bearings.
Ball bearings.
Re-grease it all and put it all back together again. And that was a once a month special treat that I really enjoyed.
Well, I have been riding bikes all my life. My current, my favorite bike is one that I have owned since 1990. It's a specialized hard rock hopper that I made into a kind of more of a, not a dirt bike, but a street bike. And I've had it
All
for
right.
over 30 years now, and I refuse to give
Ooh,
it up.
sounds like my double bass. I bought my double bass in 1989. And I'm sure you're the same. Every now and then I kind of think, oh, maybe there's going to be a better double bass or a better bike. And then you keep coming back and saying, well, actually, this is the one I love.
Yeah, I actually, I have a short story to tell you. I actually one time, thinking about buying a new one, I gave it to my son, my oldest
Oh,
son, thinking that he would appreciate its value. And one day we were all, my son, my oldest son and my oldest daughter, who live near where I live, were planning a trip to the flea market. And my beautiful specialized bike was on top of his pile of, and I said, what are you doing with that? And he said, oh, I'm taking it to the flea market. I ride my own bike, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I bought it back from him. I had to pay him for the damn bike. So,
oh no.
and I've never let it. It was a good lesson because I have never let it go again since. So
I've got a similar story, but it wasn't my son. It was an Italian double bass player. And he had a double bass, and I listened to him play, and I thought, that sounds so good.
Mhm.
And I talked to him. I said, can I buy your double bass from you because I want to replace mine? And he said, why do you want to replace yours? Yours is a brilliant double bass, and mine doesn't sound very good at all. And I said, yeah, but yours sounds loads better to me than mine does to me.
Isn't
And he
that
said,
funny?
right, go and stand on the other side of the street. I will play your double bass, and you will see that when you're standing next to it, it doesn't sound anything like it
When you're
sounds
standing
when
up.
you're on the other side of the street. And he was right, and it sounded brilliant, and his sound wasn't as good as my double bass.
Mm.
And I'm thankful to him for stopping me, as it were, divorcing my wife for a
Right,
new,
exactly.
younger
For
model.
a new younger model, yeah.
And me and my double bass, we're now cemented together until the end of time. I mean, and that's the other, oh, that's a question I'm going to ask myself. What happens to my double bass when I die?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to start thinking about it tomorrow.
You know what I've decided, and what my will says?
No.
Everything that I own will be auctioned off, and the proceeds distributed to the children. And that way, they don't have to make the decision about selling my bike to somebody else anyway. So I'll have made that decision.
Right. Okay. Yeah. For my double bass, I kind of, I mean, if you look at it with the bark written on it and the fact that it was exploded by the French police, and it's got all these stories, for me, I actually really care what happens to it. But then at the same time, once I've passed away,
it's not going to make any difference, right?
Yeah, I won't know.
So, did you repair the back of that of bark?
Yeah. I took it to the
Luthier?
luthier.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, luthier. The luthier is the way I would say it in French. And he just said, "What on earth has happened here?" And I said, "Yeah, it must be a total disaster. This must be irreparable." And he just took it for a few days and gave it back to me, and it was, you know, you could see the breaks, but he glued it all back together again, and it's still going fine.
So I remember about stringed instruments that there's always this European competition between the French, the Italians, and the Germans about who produces the best strings, which of them produces the best double bass.
Right. Well, this is actually a Hungarian double bass.
Wow.
But because it's been so abused, destroyed, and blown up by the French police, I think the French luthier who repaired it is actually probably the biggest contributor to its quality, rather than the Hungarian who built it in the first place.
All right.
I've never thought about that before in my entire life. And he's the most lovely guy in the entire world.
Sounds like a good choice to do the repairs. I'm sorry. Back to you. Let's get back on track here, my dear.
Are you sure?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. This is like not at all anything to do with bikes or
yeah. Go ahead.
bases. So I don't know.
That's why we brought him here.
Yeah, well, maybe we should get back on topic.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking her to do.
I have a question here. What do you mean Google is your new business card?
Oh, right. Great question. I mean, especially in the COVID period, is what you would do would be talking like this on a call, and I would be Googling your name to figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, my opinion of you as we're talking is going to change depending on the result that I see. So, in a world previous to COVID, we would give the business card, but people would put the business card in a drawer and they would still Google your name. And today, with post-COVID, video meetings are incredibly the thing that we all do. People are Googling your name as they're talking to you, and what they see has a massive effect on how they perceive you. So your Google business card is what appears when somebody Googles your brand name or your personal name, and what it shows will have an immense influence of the other person's perception of you, either in real time on a Zoom meeting or post-meeting, and they always do when they Google your name or your brand name.
So what is it about Google as opposed to Bing? I think you said a little bit ago that 90%, 80 or 90% of the people use Google. What, and I'm going to go back to the magical question. What magic does Google own that enables it to dominate this particular segment, the search segment?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think what you've made me realize in the last 30 minutes is that if you search a brand name or a personal name, you will get a better result from Bing than you will from Google.
Mm-hmm.
But if you search for where can I buy red shoes, what's the answer to 55 times 1,000 or whatever it might be?
Mm-hmm.
Google's going to give me the better answer. So we default to Google because it gives us answers to other questions. We default to Google when we're searching for a brand. But in fact, if we were searching for a brand, Bing will give us the better result. And a lot of this as well is to do with the historical way that this developed, is that Microsoft had such dominance in the mid-noughties. There were cases in the US, cases in the EU, which brought them back. They had Internet Explorer, which dominated because it was part of Microsoft Windows. They were told that they couldn't default to that, therefore people would then need to choose. And Google have managed to take over in that sense, in the sense that by default we now get Google, whereas 15, 20 years ago, by default, we would have got Microsoft.
I'm really curious to find out, of course we can't do it now, but I'm really curious to find out that when I used Chrome to search for Shelley's name, it came back with the Bing results. And when I used my name or your name and used Chrome, it comes back with Google results. I'm really interested why Shelley, in this case, was able to come back with something from Bing. I also wanted to ask,
Toby, you've just made me incredibly happy. I'm not the only person who's getting other people's names wrong.
You know what? I'm embarrassed to say that I do that. Call her something different at least once every program, and we've been partners for 10 years.
Oh, literally. Right, okay.
Or it was even worse when we first met. When I'd write her name, and she used to have to remind me that I'm never using enough E's in any part of her name. So, but I've got it after 10 years. But I am curious: is mid-noughties in common use on the continent?
Oh, I don't know. I use it, and it seems a bit strange, but I thought it was a really popular young person's way of saying.
I have never heard it, but I'm going to use it every chance I get from now on.
Oh, right. Well, because we had the mid-90s when I was in the punk folk group. Then, you can't have anything other than the mid-noughties, and now you've got the mid-10s, and now the mid-20s.
Yeah, right.
So there was this uncomfortable 20 years where it didn't really make sense, and now we're into the mid-20s. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, the mid, I had never heard it used before. I always say the mid-thousands or the mid-2000s, something like that. Right. But the using the word not for zero is very British, and so it works for me.
Right.
I am gonna use all these the next opportunity I get, whether it's mid-noughties or.
And the mid-noughties sounds a little bit dangerous. And
No,
exciting,
it does.
doesn't
That's
it?
why I like it. I
Risque.
think I like it about it. Yeah, there's a bit of risqueness to it.
Now you're just making up new words.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Go back. Get me back on track
All
here.
right. So, what would you recommend for people on a budget who want to start a website? What would be the best place for them to get the best SEO values?
Right. I think one huge question, if you don't have a website, you have to make sure that you're within your comfort zone for managing it over time. And I think there is a tendency for people to say, well, I'll go and see a digital marketing agency. They'll build me a website, and they create an incredibly complicated website that nobody can manage, and you lose control. Control is the single most important thing. So you would want to either use something like WordPress, which is terribly, terribly common and everybody knows how to use it, or something like Duda, which I really love because it really is plug and play. Or Wix is another alternative. And the disadvantages that these platforms bring in terms of how you appear to search engines like Google is vastly outweighed by the fact that you can actually manage it yourself. So simplicity, make sure you manage it yourself, or you can manage it yourself. And don't get tricked by pricing. It isn't because it costs you $100 a month that it's necessarily better than $10 a month. You've got to be pragmatic and careful. Make sure that, I mean, the really simple rules are, I need to control it. I need to make sure that it works on a desktop computer, on a mobile phone. I need to make sure that it represents me in terms of visuals and in terms of text, and that I can update it as and when I need to, and I don't need to call a techie geek developer to do so, because there is no reason for you to call somebody who is highly qualified for techie geeky stuff to update an image or a piece of text on your own website. And you need to own it. And you need to make sure you have control of the domain name. You were talking Toby earlier on. You control your domain name, but not the website itself.
Right, that's correct. So if I were to put something on Wix, I'm still kind of pointing to it. Do I actually own the website that I build on Wix or Duda?
Yes, because you can export it and then re-import it into a different platform.
Well, and so that brings up the next question. Let's say I build something on Wix, because I've always been curious about this. I'm glad we have the opportunity to ask you. I build something on Wix. I export it. Where does it go from there? Don't I have to have some sort of my own server to be able to do that?
Yes, you do in theory, but you don't need that. That's the idea of thinking too big.
Okay.
If you think about a server, when we had Blue Whale Koala, which was the blue dog in the other koala, we had 100 million page views a month and 5 million visits, and we had one server. If you've got 20, 50, 100, even 1,000 visits a month, you don't need a whole server. You need a little bit of somebody else's server. And the fact that you're using somebody else's server computer, let's call it a computer, doesn't mean that they control the domain. So for example, I have a Kalicube has a server that I manage, and it's part of the Google Cloud. So I'm actually sharing the server with Google, with all of the massive infrastructure that Google has. It's a tiny portion of a small piece of one of their physical machines. And I run 15 websites, and they all run fine. And I do whatever I want.
And for example, GoDaddy, which is one of the IP services that we use, where we buy our domain names and things like that, they offer a cloud server. That's what you're talking about. Is that right? Okay.
Exactly. So what you can do is buy your domain from somebody like GoDaddy or another big player like that, and you don't need to worry about the fact that you're sharing with other people, because everybody shares with other people all the time. So that's not a big deal. And another thing that a lot of people don't know about GoDaddy is that the websites that they offer in certain areas of the world are actually built on Duda.
Spell Duda for our audience.
D-U-D-A.
Okay.
It's a phenomenally good platform. And it's one of those things is people think, oh, I should build a WordPress site because it's the most popular, which is great. But then you have to learn WordPress. You have to figure it all out. It's a lot of work. And you probably do need somebody who knows what they're talking about. So you would need to pay somebody to help. When you use something like GoDaddy or Duda, you don't need to know anything. You can add an image, you can change a text. And from my perspective, we come right back to where I'm coming from, is I'm a person or a company. I need to manage my own entity home where Google sees me online. And the most important thing isn't having the most beautiful website or even the most technically proficient website. It's that I control the information that I'm providing to my audience, be it people or the machines Bing and Google. So control is, I would argue, the single most important thing, and all the rest of it is kind of secondary. And one thing I see a lot with company bosses and even people as well is I want pixel perfect design. And you're saying you're literally the only person who cares. Take a step back, accept a few compromises, but retain control. Full stop.
So when you use Duda to build your website, do they also provide you the independent server platform or the cloud server platform?
Yeah.
Or do you do the same thing? You export it, etc.?
No. With something like Duda or even GoDaddy or Wix, for example, you would build your website and it would be on their server, on their computer, and they would then deliver it to the people you need. So it's a one-stop shop. GoDaddy,
does that give me the kind of independence, for lack of a better way to describe it, that you're describing?
Yes, exactly. And the only reason you would ever export that site and try to take it somewhere else is if you change platform, you decided that you didn't like the platform.
Right.
But as long as you don't need to change platform, you never have the need to export it. But they all offer export possibilities. The exception would be Wix is probably the most difficult. Once you're in there, they really try to lock you in.
We had that experience.
Yeah. So I would tend to look towards GoDaddy or Duda rather than Wix, not because Wix isn't good, but because there is a tendency for them to make it very difficult for you to leave. And that's also something you should keep an eye on, is how difficult will it be for me to leave if I choose to?
Right. All right. Well, before we start wrapping up, I would like to go to your both of your websites and ask you to tell us which one, if people want to know more from you, if they want to reach out to you, which is the better of the two websites to do that, or do they both accomplish the same thing?
I think you made a really good point earlier on, is that no, they don't accomplish the same thing. If you look at this page, which is my personal website, it is very personal. You've got if you stay at the top, the images are actually there to demonstrate or to tell my story. You've got the wolf with the double bass, which is my music career. You've got the Kalicube logo just below it, which is a falcon. You've got Google as a child. You've got Google and Bing. You've got the blue dog and yellow koala. You've got the red shirt, which is the Brand SERP guy, which is the shirt I'm wearing. And the cow and the sheep, who was supposed to be punk cow and punk sheep from my youth. So that tells my personal story. And if you switch to Kalicube, you'll see that we're the Brand SERP optimization and knowledge panel management specialists. And if you scroll down a little bit, we've got 9 blocks which show that we have the Brand SERP book, we have the academy, we have a SaaS platform, we have a FAQ section which is completely free to learn all about SEO and Brand SERPs and knowledge panels. We have knowledge nuggets, which is information that people have shared with me on my show. We've got Kalicube Tuesdays, we've got the With Jason Barnard podcast. So basically here, it's the professional aspect of Brand SERPs and knowledge panels. What do you need to know? What do you need to do? How can you leverage the power of your brand on Google and on Bing? And on my personal website, it's do you want to talk about double bases, bicycles, and Mont Ventoux?
And so our ideal client is what we refer to as the encore entrepreneur, the individual who is looking to start a second life with a new business after retirement.
Right.
Who is your ideal client? Who's the one that are going to be? Who's the business person or company that's going to benefit the most from your services?
That's a great question. The people and companies who benefit the most from what we do are people who have a public persona that they need to present, where people will Google or Bing their name and make sure that their audience sees exactly what they want the audience to see. Or companies where, if you think about it from a global perspective, I spend a lot of time talking to people like yourselves, talking to people on social media, talking to people face to face, with the aim of getting them interested in what I'm talking about. And at the end of the day, once they think Jason Barnard is saying something interesting, something I'm interested in learning more about, what they do, they Google my name, Jason Barnard, or my company name, Kalicube, to learn more about it. And it's fundamentally important, after all the effort I've made to convince them to actually be interested in what I'm talking about, that what they see when they search my name or my company name is exactly what I want them to see, and that they can learn and move forwards in their relationship with me from that moment onwards.
So before we leave, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind singing one of the songs from your TV series.
It's really difficult to choose. This is a surprise. I'll sing "Hooray, another sunny day, hooray, a sunny day to play, hooray, another sunny day for you and me and me and you, hooray."
We could use that. We're having a gray, snowy day outside, so a little music helps.
Brilliant.
Shelley, anything else?
No, I can't think of anything else. We have asked all the questions that were on this paper, so
good.
We've come to the end of our show.
And
We have a lot of great
very
advice
pleasant,
here.
Sorry, there was a delightful 57 minutes, and it's gone by in an absolute flash. Thank you so much.
We're glad that it went that way for you too. We always feel like we don't ever have enough time. But what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to let Shelley do some closings, but then I'm going to take you off the screen. We've got to do our outros, and I'm not going to bore you through that. But I'd appreciate it if you'd stay on so we can talk a little bit afterwards. All right, Shelley?
Right. Well, I can actually sing a goodbye.
Okay.
All right, do that.
A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Toby and Shelley. It was so lovely.
That's good.
See you later, guys.
I'm gonna have to take up that whole singing our outro.
See you later.
Thank you for your time. We do appreciate it.
You.
All right. Well, that was Jason Barnard with Kalicube, and we appreciate all that great information he's provided for us today. We're going to take action on it, and we suggest you do the same. And that's all we have for today. We'll be back again next week with another presentation from Toby and Shelley. And we get what's going on there?
Oh, you know what? I accidentally moved the table. There we go.
Framing. Okay. That's all I have, and we're going to have a fun weekend getting ready for Halloween.
Well, if you're not already aware of what just happened, you had almost an hour's worth of some really good storytelling and in addition, some really good information that should be useful to you. I certainly found it beneficial for us, and I'm going to go investigate some of the things that Jason recommended to us. So I felt like it was a very informative show, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. All right. In the meantime, we will see you next week at 4:00, Shelley, with Shelley Carney, Livestream Coach, on Wednesday at 7:00. We'll see you again with New Mexico day trips. And we haven't made a final decision about what we'll be doing there. But if you haven't seen this last week's show, please go to New Mexico day trips. Take a look at that. I think you'll enjoy the program because we did some cooking on our travels this time. Not big stuff, but it was kind of fun. And it was in the wind, which was just amazing to do. And then, of course, Shelley is on Thursdays with Jen. And that's Thursday at 11 a.m. Now, next week, they're doing a premiere because Jen will be traveling.
That's right.
But you've already recorded the shows for next week.
It's going to be awesome.
And
then email.
It's about email?
Oh.
Oh, good. And then, of course, we'll see you next Thursday at 1 o'clock. And all of these times are Mountain Daylight Time. When do we change? Is it this weekend?
Soon. Yeah,
it's pretty soon. So just look for us on all our channels. Shelley Carney Livestream Coach, New Mexico Day Trips, Women Conquer Business, and Messages and Methods. So they're all very informative programs. So we appreciate if you take the time to go search those out and look for them. Other than that, I guess we can say our goodbyes.
That's right.
All right, here we go with the outro, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for joining Messages and Methods Livecast Live 2.0, hosted by Shelley Carney and Toby Younis. Please subscribe and leave a comment or question, and we'll consider your ideas for future shows. Share this podcast with your family and friends so they can learn about current digital marketing practices too. Check the show notes for links and resources, and please come back again next week.